All right, here's where we're going to start. On the newer engines, they have a hose, which I call an extraction hose, which is right here that goes to the bottom of the pan. Now what you do is you hook up your pump to this hose, and it takes all the oil right out of the bottom of the pan, which is the easiest way to do it. Now some of the older engines don't have this extraction hose, so you have to go through the dipstick tube. So they provide a tube which looks a lot like this. There's different sizes, and you put it right in the dipstick tube, push it down into the pan, and it sucks the oil into your bucket just like it would in the extraction tube. So you have two methods. You either have a hose that goes to the bottom of the pan, or you have to go through the dipstick tube. And they provide a little adapter for that. It just slips on the tube, slips in the hose. You put a little clamp on here, and it goes right to your pump, right into your little holding tank here to get rid of your oil. Okay, this is the extraction hose that goes to the bottom of the pan. It goes underneath the pan. So we're going to get all of the oil out of your pan through this hose here. So we take off this cover. This cover is just a safety feature to make sure it doesn't leak after you fill it up. And then I'm going to stick my hose. This is an easy one. Just going to put it right on there and put it on there and get a nice fit. Okay, so we have the hose connected.
So we all ready to pump out the oil now?
Well, I had you preheat the engines.
Right, we ran for about 15 minutes.
Warms up the oil and gets all the stuff off the bottom of the pan, any contaminants that might be there. But it also thins out the oil and makes it come out a lot faster. Okay. So you get a cleaner oil change. And what's kind of important is we let it set for about 15 or 20 minutes. So all the oil that comes in the top of the engine when you run it drains down in the pan. So you get an extra quart of oil out that way. So we've done that. So all we have to do now is just flip the switch and pump the oil into the bucket here. This particular pump has a forward and a backward, so you can pump either way. You always want to make sure that you're pumping from your engine into the bucket and not from your bucket into the engine. Hard to do, but I've done it, so it can happen. So what you do is there's a direction here. It goes in this way and out this way. You go that way. If I were to turn this way, we'd be pumping oil, dirty oil, back into the engine. So I've seen that happen, and I've done it once or twice maybe. Now you hear the difference there. Now we're pumping oil. It's coming through here, and it's going right into the bucket. And this will take about 2 or 3 minutes. You'll hear the pump start to rise, and then you know you're empty. And I usually let it go a little longer than that. When you're pretty confident, when you hear the pump wind up and it's not straining anymore, you're pretty confident that all the oil is out of the pan. What you want to do before you unhook all this stuff and get to the next step is check your oil dipstick. Make sure that it's completely dry. And in this case, there's not a trace of oil anywhere on the dipstick. So we're good to go to the next step, which is changing the oil filter.
Okay, Greg, we've got all the oil pumped out of the engine. What's the next step?
Okay, we were positive we got all the oil out because we've checked it several times,
right,
just to make sure. Now we have to change the oil filter. Okay. And there's different ways to do that, but I'm going to show you a way to do it where you don't make a mess, because every drop of oil that goes in your bilge, you got to clean up.
Right. And
I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've kind of developed a system to where you're not going to lose any oil in your bilge.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you how to do that right now.
All right, let's go.
First thing we're going to do is start with an oil pad. You can get these anywhere. And it's an oil absorbent pad. It won't absorb water. It only will absorb oil. We're going to slide this under the oil filter, because when you spin it off, there's going to be oil in there, and it's going to drip out. So we want to catch it with this. And this will absorb probably, a quart of oil before it's done. So we're going to stick this under here, and I don't know if you can get this, but this particular oil filter is pretty much tucked back in here. So we're going to do the best we can. Okay, but the real secret to keeping the oil out of your bilge is to catch it in a freezer bag. Now these are freezer bags, they're 1 gallon Ziploc freezer bags. If they're sandwich bags, they're gonna leak and the oil is gonna be hot, so it's gonna melt them. So they've gotta be freezer bags, that's very important. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen that filter first and then slide the bag under it. And then when it's loose, we're gonna take it by hand, drop the filter in the bag, and put it right in our bucket, and hopefully not spill a drop of oil. Okay, I've got the wrench on here, and I'm gonna turn it, and turn it, and turn it, until I can turn it with my hand. See, now it's loose, but it's not leaking just yet. So that's what we want. So we want to get the wrench off of here. Now, we're gonna stick this underneath and snug it up like a diaper, so to speak. I'll try to keep my hand out of the way. I'm going to hold it up with one hand so it doesn't drop, and it's loose, so I'm going to spin it off. Okay, it just fell in the bag. That's exactly what we want. We're gonna let everything drain into the bag for a few seconds. Then we'll pull it out and put a new filter on. Anything that's left in there is gonna drip into the baggie so we don't make a mess. Then we'll pull the baggie out, not drip any oil, and put a new oil filter on. Okay, now we've got all the oil is dripped out of the head. And what we're gonna do is get this oil filter out of here. Now on this particular boat, it's very tight to get it out. So you gotta work it out so you don't spill anything. There we go. Okay, we have the oil filter off, and you can see the oil that went into the baggie that normally would go in your bilge, which we don't want. That's why we use the baggies. So we seal this up, put it in our bucket, and now we're ready to install the brand new oil filter, fill it up with new oil, and run the engine. Okay, the next step is putting the brand new filter on. The first thing you want to do is fill it with oil, as much as you can. Some of these go sideways and you really can't fill them with oil, like on some generators. But in this engine, we're going to fill it with as much oil as we can before we put it on. That'll help with a dry startup. Lubricate your gasket. We have the oil filter full of oil, as much as we can. We've got the gasket lubricated, now we just need to spin it on. Some of these are tricky to get in, so make sure your hands are dry and clean so it doesn't slip out. Okay, once you get a couple of threads to catch, just turn it very carefully with one finger to make sure you're not cross-threading. If it spins on like that, you're good to go. On this particular filter, they use a little grip so you can tighten it by hand, just like this. And then you're good to go. Now, some of these oil filters will say hand tighten only, which means you tighten it pretty much as you can. Others will have a gauge on it where it'll say you've got to go 3/4 or something like that. Pay attention to what the filter says. And if it says you got to go 3/4, it'll have a notch. And you have to move it 3/4 to be factory spec, because you want it factory spec. Okay, we pulled all the oil out. We put a brand new oil filter on. We've lubricated the gasket, which is very important, and we filled the filter full of oil. Now we're ready to put oil in the pan. So what we've done is put a funnel in the valve cover, which is where the oil goes, and there's a little thing that'll tell you where it goes, so you can't mess that up. And we're gonna put the oil in this way. Now check with your manual. These take all different volumes of oil. I know this one takes about 1.5 gallons or 6 quarts. So I'm gonna put 1 gallon in, check it, and then go from there. All right, we got 1 gallon in. I checked the dipstick. It's gonna take about another quart and a half. So Dan, can I get some more Lucas?
Here you go, here's some Lucas oil.
Yeah.
Now we use Lucas oil for a couple reasons. One of them is the Lucas oil will last longer than your plain 15 to 40 oils. And another nice thing about it, it's designed for your engine to last longer, the oil to last longer in your engine. And because of the formula of the Lucas oil, you have no dry starts. And you know that's really important.
Well, I have customers of mine that swear by the oil treatment, which is a lot thicker, but you add it to your oil, and it literally just climbs onto the bearings and everything else, and it lubricates them, so you just don't have a dry start. We're gonna run our engine to get our levels correct, because we don't overfill it, we don't want to underfill it. So just to be sure, we're gonna run the engine, let it drain down for a few minutes, check the oil, top it off, and we're done. We're ready to go fishing. Okay, we've done the complete oil change. We've run the engines for a few minutes. Now we're gonna check the levels to make sure that we have enough oil in the engine before we button it up and go fishing. So let's check that now. We're checking for 2 things. We want to make sure that the oil is really clean, which means we did a good job. And we're checking for levels to make sure that we have enough oil in here before we take off on a trip. And this shows absolutely perfect. And you can tell it's perfect because you can't see it. Okay, we have perfectly clean oil, and it's right at the top of the full mark. So we're ready to go. We're done with the oil change, and it took very little time, very little effort, and you can do it at home just by following these simple steps.
Hey Greg, thanks for helping out today.
Hey, it was fun.
And today we're able to show you how it is to change the oil on your own boat. And Greg does this for a living, so if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, don't be afraid to give him a call. His company is Marina Oil Services here in Southern California, and they can find you at
888-441-4OIL.
4OIL.
4645.
All right, cool. And that's Greg, my buddy, so he can help you out with all that. Doesn't matter what size vessel he has, he works on a lot of big boats too. And his own personal boat is a 50-footer. And put the Lucas oil in, you'll be really happy with it. It helps protect against your engine and makes everything run a little bit better. And what I like about the Lucas oil, it's designed to last a lot longer than those generic 1540 oils that you see on the market. And I guess the #1 selling point too is that you get no dry starts with this oil.
The cold starts are much, much, much better with the Lucas oil. And there's other Lucas products. There's oil treatments that are actually designed to work with this, that even bumps it up.
Cool. Well, in future blogs, we're going to be showing you other Lucas products to use on your vessels, on your fishing gear, all that too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Greg.
Hey, it was fun.
All right. So make sure you subscribe right here on my YouTube channel, and make sure you're following me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm in all those different places too. Well, thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you again really soon.